Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the WASA Distance Education Network and NBV3E. Today, as we did in our last class of last week, um, we are going to discuss and look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. I have a document here produced out in by the government of British Columbia, and there's probably a number of different variations of the same document going around, but I like the way this one is laid out. Um, the calls for action are broken down into subtopic areas. So we have child welfare, which we didn't really dig too much into in this course because, and it's an important um, um, issue that, well, there's been lots of news and um, recently on um, court decisions. Um, but our last topic that we discussed in lesson 18 was education. And the topic that we are going to be discussing today is on language. So I thought I would start off by reviewing um, part of lesson 18 on education and mentioning or listing off the calls for action for education. Now, the first one here, which is titled 6, is we call upon the government of Canada to repeal Section 43 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Section 43 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Now, there's some things that you may not be familiar with, so I went for a search on that and found this. Um, Section 43, every school teacher, parent, or person standing in the place of a parent is justified in using force by way of correction toward a pupil or child, as the case may be, who is under his care if the force does not exceed the what is reasonable under the circumstances. It's also called the spanking law, and you know, um, I think most people recognize that um, that people don't do that anymore, but um, um, there are a number of other methods that are kind of passive aggressive that are used against especially boys, isolating them, sticking them in the corners in the in the grade schools, um, and which would be considered as justification for the correction of a pupil. Now, it's a complicated area, and we can't really look into it to any deeper level than just explaining to you what that means right now. um, so that's what Section 43. They want it totally repealed, and the next one then is, let's see, let me find. Um, we call upon the federal government to develop with Aboriginal groups a joint strategy to eliminate educational and employment gaps between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. Okay, so this is well in momentum now. Um, there are all kinds of programs that uh, that are helping young Aboriginal Canadians to um, become um, involved with things like um, trade programs, right? Um, and um, but it all begins with education and being able to get students to successfully get that grade 12 diploma, and so that they can enter into uh, actually the workforce or into post-secondary education or into a trade program. Um, Number 8, we call upon the federal government to eliminate the discrepancy in federal education funding for First Nations children being educated on reserves and those First Nations Canadian children being educated off reserves. So yes, there is a funding gap, and it needs to be rectified um, because the it's really difficult for, let's say, a First Nation to be able to hire teachers and hang on to them when the public system pays them more. And a lot of times teachers will go into a community just to get a couple years experience, and then once they have that, it lets them um, or gives them more opportunity to um, uh, uh, be work for the provincial system, which has because it has more money and more funding, is more attractive, right? So they have pension plans that are much better. Uh, they have um, well, basically the bottom line pay is much better. So people will go where they can get the best deal as far as their contracts go. So um, it's always been a shortfall here for uh, teachers working on or in reserves. We call upon federal government to prepare and publish annual reports comparing funding for education of First Nations children on and off reserves, as well as educational and income attainments of Aboriginal peoples in Canada compared with non-Aboriginal people. So it makes sense to do that study, because when you have these facts, then you can see where um, what areas need where the funding needs to be strengthened, and so and so and such. Um, we call on the federal government to draft new Aboriginal education legislation with the full participation and informal consent of Aboriginal peoples. The new legislation would include a commitment to sufficient funding that would incorporate uh, the following principles, and and then we have 7 sections here. Um, these principles, providing sufficient funding to close identified educational achievement gaps within one generation, improving education attainment levels and success rates, developing culturally appropriate curricula, developing the right to Aboriginal languages, including the teaching of Aboriginal languages as credit courses, enabling parental and community responsibility, control, and accountability, similar to what parents enjoy in public school systems. enjoying parents or enabling parents to fully participate in the education of their children, respecting and honoring treaty relationships. And then the last 2 points on learning is we call upon the federal government to provide adequate funding to end the backlog of First Nation students seeking a post secondary education. And we call upon the federal, provincial, and territorial and Aboriginal governments to develop culturally appropriate early childhood education programs for Aboriginal families. Okay, so the next section is on language and culture. But one of the calls for action is being met by this organization right here, Reconciliation Education. Uh, these are online courses and films that provide a comprehensive, customized anti-racist education in line with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls of action. Um, with you, we aim to promote a renewed relationship between Indigenous peoples and Canada through transformation in multimedia learning. So, if I scroll down here, I can see that um, this these courses are directed towards people in the private sector. Um, this in the business case for diversity and inclusion training means dismantling the anti-Indigenous prejudices and exclusions. Um, our customizable diversity and inclusion training can help your company meet equitable solutions. Okay, so this is let's say, big corporation like BlackBerry or Telus would be able to have their employees go through this training. Or you can do it through public organizations. For indigenous organizations, government sector, not for profit, libraries, professional organizations, law enforcement, they have courses for them, for the educational sector as well. So this would help teachers, for instance. They take this course and they then are able to incorporate indigenous ideas and um, uh, curriculum into their classroom. Because often, teachers, let's say they come from a big city down in Toronto or Hamilton or anywhere across the country, right? They may not be that familiar with truth and reconciliation and First Nations. Um, they have grown up in a completely different theater of operations. So this would really help them and make them feeling less threatened, because you can only teach what you know, right? So it's like I remember as an art teacher, one of the things that um, a lot of teachers were terrified of having in their class was art. Because they just weren't familiar with it. And so, along the same vein here, it goes with teaching about First Nations and shows you ways that you can do that um, and have a successful class. And then, just for individuals, another strand or thread to follow, and you can sign up for this course. Uh, this course, where are we here? I just somewhere here I have the. There we go. So The author of this course is the First Nations University of Canada and Reconciliation Education, right? Done in both, available in both English and French. The Four Seasons is called the Four Seasons of Reconciliation. It provides foundational knowledge on the relationship between Canada, Indigenous people, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. It promotes a renewed relationship between Indigenous peoples and Canadians through transformative learning about truth and reconciliation. Um, okay, so that's the authors of this course. Um, uh, but this is a kind of course that you may run across in your professional life, but for just the normal Canadian, it's really important information for you to understand what's going on. Why haven't the First Nations people been treated as equal citizens for hundreds of years now, and what they're trying to do to rectify that. Okay. See, the cost of the course is free, so that's free to the any citizen. Um, all right. So now we are going to move on then to lesson 19, language. Language is covered in pages 307 to 319 in the textbook. When you have completed lesson 19, you will have achieved these learning goals. You'll be able to explain the importance of preserving First Nations, Métis, and Inuit languages. You will list many of the different Aboriginal languages used today. You will describe how First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples are making changes to educate and the challenges they have faced. And you will be able to describe how Aboriginal languages are being revitalized. Some of the words you're going to come across that you may want to define are rejuvenation and renewal. And as usual, they can be found these definitions can be found right in the text readings between page 307 to 319. So, we have examined the importance of language to worldviews and identify uh, and identified that in chapter 1 and page 10. Canada's Aboriginal peoples spoke a wide variety of languages before colonization. Each of those different languages reflected the worldviews, beliefs, experiences, and environments of the speakers. Some of these languages have become extinct, and others are in danger of dying. When we speak of Aboriginal education, we must consider language as a big part of that process. Language shared between peoples offers a sense of belonging, identity, and continuity with the past. It also helps guide one's values, behaviors, and attitudes since it is a true expression of culture. The Canadian government has a poor history around the language issue in schools. French was forbidden under the Ontario Regulation of 1912, and Aboriginals were not allowed to speak their native tongue in residential schools. Besides colonization and the resulting diseases, warfare, and genocide that accompanied the arrival of the Europeans, Many other factors have led to the decline of Aboriginal languages in this country, such as mainstream culture is dominated by English and French. More Aboriginals are living in urban areas where it is more difficult to learn, use, and pass on native languages. And there's always been like a constant fear of even Canada becoming Americanized on that level, right? We watch a lot of TV from the United States, and so we can't help but incorporate some of their values and attitudes by um, um, by just doing that. I mean, if you think of all the violent shows that are made in the United States and the effects that violence has on the normal citizen, and of course, language. I mean, if you want to enjoy a sitcom, even what what do you have to learn? English, of course. You have to be able to sit there and understand the what the people are saying. And so, what do people do? Well, I mean, they start to think in English, right? You think in English, and then it becomes more difficult to understand your native tongue, right? It's the same that the French have been fighting with this same thing for years, right? And they have to get quite militant about it sometimes to prove the point that they want to stay French and not English. And so that's why a lot of times, recent news on um, the government there rejecting or um, telling a lot of companies and schools that, hey, it's French. We want to teach in French. And because English has a way of kind of, um, nudging its way in there, and then um, the French language would start to degenerate. And it's the same with both the French and uh, the indigenous languages that are still being used. Also, parents and grandparents were forbidden to speak their languages in residential school. They're unable to pass their language on. The fear that if children speak their language, they will not succeed in mainstream society. And then there was underfunding of native language courses. Okay, so I mean that's always a big fear of a parent that their children need to speak the mainstream language so that they can succeed. But this is you have to also recognize that in many places of the world, um, people can speak several different languages. So in Europe, in some countries, let's say in Czechoslovakia, you would know the people there would know both, or they would know English, they would know Czech, and they would know Russian, right? And they'd be able to converse in all of those. Um, and so, uh, just because you take degree courses doesn't mean that um, you can't also be familiar with English and French if you choose. Um, it's just important to be able to have your own native language um, to feel the identity and connection with your culture. Language rejuvenation. Today there are about There are over 50 Aboriginal languages in use. See page 309 in your text for a breakdown of those languages. Okay, I think it's even included here. It is right here. So these are the languages, and over the column over here on the left says language family. So these are all of the different First Nations or tribes that um, are connected to a specific language. So they have slight differences. It's almost like the difference between, um, French and English, for instance. English is very, very close to French. I mean, they were a number of times the Normans and came over and conquered England and left a huge traces of their language there. So those two languages are very connected, and but um, uh, so in that way we have these different languages for Aboriginal peoples. So we have Algonquin. There is let's see. Some example languages are Cree, which is the most fluently spoken language, Aboriginal language in Canada. Um, 117,000. Now, these numbers could be uh, a little off because I'm not sure when this um, study was made, where they got the statistics here, right? Okay, so there's a number of different dialogues even in Cree, right? So we have Swampy Cree, Woods Cree, Moose Cree, um, and of the Algonquin family, we have Cree, we have Ojibwe, right? So that's the second largest group with 47,000. And Ojibwe would include Anishinaabe Moen, um, which would be dialects of the Ottawa, uh, Saltu, Ojibwe, Chippewa, Algonquin, and Severn Ojibwe. So Ojibwe would be included in that. And the Chippewa, that extends all the way down into southern Ontario, around Wallaceburg, Sarnia, London, and up the lake. Um, so it's this huge area that the Ojibwe um, is covered in. Micmac, that's on the east coast, I think. Blackfoot towards out west. And then we have Eskimo, which is another different family of languages. Enyik, Tiktut, right? 34,000 people. Then further out west, we have the Athabascan, which includes the Dene, the Slave, the Dogrib, and then we have the Sioux as well, which is out in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, I guess. Um, Salish, now we're getting on the west coast. There are 10 Salish family languages. And then we have, uh, I don't know how to pronounce this family name, Tissimshianic, right? These are from British Columbia. Iroquois, and they've really taken a big hit here, right? So Iroquois, once again, around the southern Great Lakes, the Mohawks, the Oneida, the Cayuga, right? And there may be enough of, so many groups tribal groups just got wiped out. I know in the Huron tribes, right? Um, and I can't specifically name any right now, but a whole bunch of tribes there just got completely wiped out through the open warfare with the Iroquois. Um, and you notice how low some of these are, like the Zaid Kilhade, only 35 people. I mean, they're on the verge of extinction. The Squamish, only 10. So uh, some of these are quite healthy, but there's others that are just on the verge of extinguishment, right? And it's a sad thing when a language dies, right? Um, it's like um, when a species of animal dies, right? Um, through, well, it could be human contact, humans changing the environment, or maybe the Earth is just um, changing too much for uh, a species of animal, and they go extinct. In Africa, right, we have the black rhino. Um, but anytime, any when anything goes extinct, languages, animals, it's a very sad thing, and there's a great sense of loss resulting from that. Um, okay, so language rejuvenation is on page bottom, not the bottom, but the top half of page 29. Language rejuvenation. Today, there are over 50 Aboriginal languages in use, and we took a look at page 309. It's included here in the lesson. Many efforts are being put forth to keep these Aboriginal languages alive. The 1996 Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples made recommendations regarding language, many of which have been acted on. Some of these projects include First Voices, National Aboriginal Languages Day, March 31st, and the Mohawk Language Program for Adults. The number of language programs for Aboriginal students is increasing. The Mohawk community of Gananoque in Quebec introduced the first Indigenous um, language immersion programs in the 1970s. Many armed reserve schools teach the community's original language in all grades. Some public school boards are also offering Aboriginal language courses. Muriel Sawyer is a teacher of the Ojibwe language in Nipissing Secondary School in North Bay. She has been awarded the Anishinaabeg Nation Lifetime Achievement Award and the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. In areas where the influence of the broader culture is not as pronounced, it is far easier to maintain use of the ancestral language. Remote communities are less exposed to the use of English or French. In the high Arctic, for example, most Inuit are fluent in their native tongue, and I would guess that there is a high percentage of people who could or who can still speak Oja Cree and Cree in our area. Support question number 1. Read, why do Aboriginal languages matter? Why are Aboriginal languages at risk? And Aboriginal languages today, pages 307 and 308. Then examine the chart on page 309 and what surprises you. Okay, so that's the chart that we looked at, but I'll bring those pages up here. Where did you go now? Just bear with me while I bring this up. Oops, not there. There we go. Pages 308 and 309. Skimming down. Oh, I got the wrong one open here. Ah, there's the reason. There we go. Resilience, renewal, and rejuvenation. That's Unit 4 in your textbook. Okay, pages 308 to 39. Right there, rejuvenating languages. Right. So make sure you highlight this page here, page 307. Why do Aboriginal languages matter? And then, why are Aboriginal languages at risk on page 308? Okay, so all that information can help you complete that support question. Rejuvenation efforts on page 3010. Okay, going back to our unit here now. All right, so we've looked at the chart. Um, so, um, one of the ways we can um, rejuvenate the indigenous languages in our country is to once again look at the Truth and Reconciliation calls for action. Because these are the hands-on types of things that government and educational institutions can do and participate and create programs for. So, where are we here? All right. So, calls for action. Bear with me. Oh, I think it's right here. All right. So, for language and culture, we'll read through these. We call upon the federal government to acknowledge that our Aboriginal rights include Aboriginal language rights. Okay, so even though there is a lot of work being done in that, the federal government um, um, hasn't acknowledged that Aboriginal rights um, also include Aboriginal language rights. So that when they come up to looking at the treaties, that Aboriginal language rights need to be included as part of the cohesive whole. Um, Up to number 14 here, we call upon the federal government to enact an Aboriginal Languages Act that incorporates the following principles. Aboriginal languages are a fundamental and valued element of Canadian culture and society, and there is an urgency to preserve them. And so we did see that a lot of them are could be extinct within a generation, right? So they need to focus on getting local experts to strengthen the community, um, what is available in the community, offer more um, classes and ways to think of ways to get more people speaking the language and using it on a regular basis. Aboriginal language rights are reinforced by the treaties. The federal government has a responsibility to provide sufficient funds for Aboriginal language revitalization and pres- um, preservation. Um, The preservation, revitalization, and strengthening of Aboriginal languages and cultures are best managed by Aboriginal people and communities, right? Funding for Aboriginal language initiatives must reflect the diversity of Aboriginal languages. And then, three more points here. We call upon the federal government to appoint in consultation with Aboriginal groups an Aboriginal Languages Commissioner. The commissioner should help promote Aboriginal languages and report on the adequacy of federal funding of Aboriginal languages initiatives. So this is a position that doesn't exist. Maybe it does now. I'm not sure if the government has gone that far. But it's always good to have someone oversee um, a program like this. That when you're trying to improve part of the culture or the overall culture, then it's makes sense to have a languages commissioner um, who is Aboriginal um, monitoring what's going on. Of course, you'll have a group of experts working with him, but he is the person who would talk directly to Parliament and be able to speak when Parliament gets together and meets. We call upon post secondary institutions to create university and college degree and diploma programs in Aboriginal languages. So I'm not sure if that's been done. There are a lot of university programs that are available out there that help to deliver knowledge about First Nations. But as far as languages, I'm not sure. We call upon all levels of government to enable residential school survivors and their families to reclaim names changed by residential school system by waiving administrative costs for a period of 5 years for the name change process and the revision of uh, official identity documents such as birth certificates, passports, driver's license, uh, health cards, status cards, and social insurance numbers. Yeah, so I haven't heard anything that this has been changed. Uh, but in some of these ways, things, you can see the government being slow. You know, even uh, uh, if your name, it's I've experienced this. Because my family name had originally it had an accent on one of the E's in it. Um, but boy, oh boy, was it hard. Um, and eventually, the government won out. They did change it for a while, and then they made me change it back. So, anyways, so that is the calls to action for language. Um, all right, so we need to move along here so we can finish up with the key question. Mm, I don't think we'll get to the key question. That's fine. We have a couple of support questions, and we'll finish off with support question number two. Um, uh, yeah, that's on page 31. So we've already looked at support question number one, and I'd like you to finish that. This one right here. Read why do Aboriginal languages matter? Page 307 to 308. right? And then um, write about why are Aboriginal languages at risk and what surprises you about what you've read on page 307 and 308 and the chart on page 309. And then support question number 2, refer to the quotation from Blue Quills First Nations College on page 307. There it is right there. Our language is a gift from the Creator, and we carry for our children. Our language carries the knowledge of this land. Our language carries our knowledge of who we are. Our language carries our future. All right? Explain in your own words why preserving First Nations, Métis, and Inuit language matters. All right, and also finish reading pages 32, lifelong learning and community renewal, and do support question number 3. Read lifelong learning and role models, pages 315 to 318, and choose one role model and give a detailed profile of how that person would serve as a good role model for youth. All right, specifically for youth. Um, so these are listed on page 315 and 318. I'll bring those up and show them to you. Where are you now? Oh, we don't need that open anymore. I was going to find the page number, but I have too many things open up. We'll close that. Right. Hmm. Well, I've lost that part of the textbook that I had opened up here. But it's easy enough for you just to go right to that those pages 315 and 318. I will bring them up tomorrow when I find what I did with the textbook PDF, and choose one role model and give a detailed profile of how that person would serve as a good role model for youth. Anyways, so work on the support questions. Do the little bit of reading that I assigned you, and then tomorrow we will discuss the lesson 19. Um, um, yes, the key question for this lesson. All right. Thank you very much for listening in today. I hope you enjoyed our class. Um, and we'll be back on air again tomorrow. Remember, this is the last week of class, so try to get in whatever assignments that you have completed in to me so I can get them all graded and we can get this course notched off on your transcript. Anyways, have a great evening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.